Hey y'all, I'm Tammy and the cameraman is Chris. And today we're going to show you how to make the best chicken and dressing, Southern style with cornbread, just like my mama did. And it is good. So let's get started. So you're going to start with 6 tablespoons of butter, 1/4 cup of corn oil, an egg. I use a large egg, 2 cups of buttermilk. And this is whole buttermilk. Okay, and 3 cups of white lily cornmeal mix. And this is buttermilk cornmeal mix. All right, we're going to mix this up. Now you're going to bake this at 350 degrees. And we're just going to bake this in my dressing pan. Now, if I was making cornbread, just to be making cornbread, of course, I'd use an iron skillet and shortening to grease it with. But today, we're just making this for dressing. We're going to get it in the oven. We're going to bake it at a lower temperature because you don't want it to turn too dark for dressing. We're just going to cut some celery into some couple of stalks of celery up in big pieces. Then you're going to take an onion and cut it into large pieces. You're going to place them in a stock pot with your chicken breast side down. And really what we're doing is we're cooking this chicken to put inside of our dressing, and we're making some good chicken stock. All right, we're going to put in a teaspoon and a half of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, a tablespoon of chicken bouillon granules. So we're going to turn it all the way down to simmer. Okay, our cornbread's done. And you're going to see it's a light color, but it's done. All right, once your chicken is done, you're going to pick it up with 2 big spoons, and it's going to start falling apart. And sit it out on a plate to cool down some. Now I'm going to get the rest of the pieces out of here. All right, now we're going to pour up our chicken broth that we're going to use in our dressing. You're going to have at least 4.5 cups. So you should get plenty of broth for your dressing if you boil your chicken. Okay, we got our hard part done yesterday. Well, it wasn't hard, but we made our cornbread and we boiled our chicken and got our broth. So today, all we have to do is put the dressing together and get it in the oven. It sure does save on time if you don't do it all the same day. I suggest you do what I did and make these 2 things the day before, okay? Now we're going to start mixing it up. You cannot find a better Thanksgiving dressing than my mama's. All right, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to put in this big bowl for our dressing is our cornbread that we made yesterday. And I tell you to put 3/4 of the cornbread in there. So that would be half, and that would be 3/4. And it seems like a waste not to go ahead and put the rest of the cornbread in there, but I just tried to make it perfect. And this is how I know it's going to turn out just right. I had to write it down and figure it out for everybody. Make sure that your cornbread recipe on page 89 is 3 cups of cornmeal mix and 2 cups of buttermilk, okay? Or you're not going to have enough cornbread in your dressing. So we're going to set this to the side, and we're going to use this to bake our dressing in. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is I have already cut up onion when I got them in bulk, and I froze them, and I'm using them today. That's a cup of onion chopped. Now that was easy, wasn't it? And then we've got some celery, and you want to chop it pretty fine as well. If you don't want to use your knife to do this, you don't have to. So if you've got a chopper like this, you can do your celery in it and it'd be fine. But now if you're going to do onion, because it's going to bring out a lot of the juices of the onion, I might reduce the onion by a little bit. But you can see how little it makes it. So you get the flavor in there without people having to get a large bite of celery. It's totally up to you how you want to make it. All right, so we're going to get all the celery in our dressing. I like the bigger pieces of celery myself, but not everybody does. All right, we're going to slice some bread in cubes, and we're going to use this bread in our dressing. I usually add it last, but we can go ahead and slice it and get it ready. So just whatever loaf bread you've got at home works. Put a couple of boiled eggs in it. So we're going to do 2 boiled eggs. There's one. I have to push it in there. It's about too big for the egg chopper. 2. Now we're going to add 1 can of cream of chicken soup. It's the smaller can. I think there are 10.5 ounces. This actually adds a lot of flavor. It makes it taste good, and it makes it fluffier and not as dense when it cools down, okay? So I don't leave that out either. Then you're going to have salt and pepper. Let's see, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Our poultry seasoning is McCormick, and it's mostly sage, okay? Just has a couple of more things in it. All right, so it's up to you how sagey you want it. Mine says a 1/2 to 3/4. I'm going to use the 3/4. So make sure you use McCormick poultry seasoning if you want it to taste like my mother's dressing. And if you like it real sagey, you can always add more. All right, we're going to put in a tablespoon of chicken bouillon granules. If you're using squares, you would use 3 little squares or 1 large Knorr square. There's different kinds. We're going to put in 2 cups of milk. And then we're going to put in 4.5 cups of broth. This is our broth from yesterday. That's 3 cups. If you want all that fat in there to make it taste good, you can put it in there or leave it out. It's up to you. And then there's 2 raw eggs that go in it. And a lot of people are wondering why. It helps it set up and be fluffy as well. So you want your dressing to be good at room temperature, not hard as a brick, okay? A lot of people make dressing and they don't put the cream of chicken soup and they don't put the eggs in there, the raw eggs. And so once it gets to room temperature, it's dense and it's hard. This dressing, it's fluffy. So you can make it ahead of time and warm it up, and it's delicious. It's always delicious, okay? So we're going to beat that egg up a little bit, and then we're just going to mix everything up, and then we're going to add our breadcrumbs. All right, and one other thing, if you make this ahead and you freeze it and you thaw it, you need to mix it up really good before you put it in the oven, because the water's going to rise to the top. And so just do a good mix on it before you cook it. All right, now we're going to add our breadcrumbs. You're just going to fold them in. This helps it make fluffier dressing too. This is the chicken that we boiled, and we're going to put it in our dressing. So this is also going to make our dressing thicker and not quite as runny. I don't know that I want to add any more chicken than that. That was a really big chicken. You should be able to pat it even after you put the chicken in, and it look solid on the top like that, if it's got enough in it. And I've made this recipe, y'all, perfect pretty much so that when you bake it, it's going to turn out really good. It says cook on 350 degrees for 1 hour, then turn the oven down to 325. and cook it 30 more minutes. And then it tells you to make sure it's done. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to show you what it looks like after an hour of cooking, and then I'll show you what it looks like after the 30 minutes at 325, and we'll see if it's done, okay? We're going to spray our pan before we add our dressing, and that way it's easier to clean. If you're taking your dressing somewhere and you don't want to have to fool the pan, then get a throwaway pan. I'm going to cook it an hour at 350. Look how pretty it is in the pan. All right, this has been in here for 1 hour at 350 degrees. You can see it. So we're going to turn it down to 325 and continue cooking it. All right, here's our dressing. It's been in here for about an hour and a half. And really, I think it's done. Now, I do usually like to cook it until you can kind of see how it's cracked a little bit here and here. I like to cook it until the middle part's cracked too. My oven does cook slower than your oven will. And if you use convection, it'll get done even quicker. So I'm about to use the convection to do my sweet potato souffle. And so this thing will start getting done quicker once I start my souffle. All right, let's dip us a piece. And it's got chicken in it, so it's got the protein in it too. It's not just the dressing. A lot of people just make the dressing. And I'm going to tell you, my dressing is so good, you don't need any gravy. But if you want to make some chicken gravy, I got plenty of recipes for that too.
Tammy with Collard Valley Cooks. Today I'm going to show you a simple recipe in our Volume 2 cookbook, candied sweet potatoes. I bought yams because they were marked down, but now you can buy sweet potatoes or yams, either one. I bought a bag of yams reduced, and there's quite a few that look really nice. You want them to be firm and the ends to look nice. These are a little bit, you know, discolored, but they're fine for what I'm going to use them for. This one, of course, is terrible, and we will discard the terrible, you know, the ones that are black. Sometimes you can salvage, like this one is black on the tip end, but this side looks pretty good, so I'll half this one and use the end. Okay, it's good to have a bowl of water handy when you're peeling sweet potatoes because they turn brown so fast, and that way you don't have to worry about them getting ugly before you get finished. We're going to slice these for candied yams. I like to slice them in circles, and I like to slice them about 1/4 inch thick, like this. We're going to turn on our stovetop. These are our potatoes. Another thing that you want to make sure you don't do is if you slice a potato and it has a lot of white spongy things in the center, it's an old potato, so don't use it. You want them to be nice and pretty and uniform and crisp. We're going to put in a 1/4 cup of sugar, about a teaspoon of salt, you can use a little less salt if you're using salted butter. This is in our recipe book. And so we're going to put in about 3 tablespoons of butter. About 3 tablespoons of butter. Now, if you think you've got more potatoes, then of course double this part. After they boil, you can add some sugar and butter again. But I do like to add a little water to them. Some people put enough sugar in them, they don't have to put any water in them. But I like to cook mine. And the water does evaporate off. So just turn them on high and let them do a cook down first. I'm going to put them on about medium, and I'm going to let them cook. Okay? I'm gonna put a lid on them, and we'll be back. Okay, y'all, this has been simmering for a little while. It is ready to start reducing, so we're gonna put it on high, take the lid off of it, and I'm gonna cook all this water off of it and come back and put a little butter and a little bit of brown sugar in it, and then they're gonna be ready to serve. All right, you can see that the water's cooking off of it. I know you can make this without the water, but it can use less sugar and be really good if you do it this way. And they're just delicious. So I'm gonna let just a tiny bit more water come out of these. Then I'm gonna put a little butter and sugar on top of them and cover them up, and they're gonna be ready to serve. All right, we're putting these on low. They are done. You don't want to turn them a lot and beat them all up. So all we're going to do now is they've got just about enough sugar in them already because I didn't do half and half like the recipe called for. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little sugar on them and make them pretty. Now you can put some pie spices in there if you want to. You can put some cinnamon, whatever you want to do. But in my family, they just like plain old sweet potatoes candied, and that's it. So that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to add just a little bit of butter to make them delish. And we're going to cover them up and then put them in a serving bowl. Look at that yummy stuff on that spoon. These are ready to put on the table and serve. One escaped. A lot of people like to put orange rind in them. We're going to start making our rolls, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put 1 1/4 cups of whole milk in a container. You need to put it in the microwave, and it needs to be lukewarm just like a baby bottle. So it took mine 1 minute and 15 seconds to get to that temperature. Make sure you stir it good and make sure that just the top is not warm and the bottom's cold. So you can test this on your arm just like you would a baby bottle, and it should be just barely warm feeling. So it shouldn't be hot. Now we're going to heat up our mixing bowl under some hot water so that when it gets down in there to activate, the bowl does not cool it off too much. We're going to use the regular paddle for this. We're going to pour this in. We're going to put in a teaspoon of sugar, which helps it activate as well. 5 tablespoons of butter softened, and barely turn this on. Now we're going to add this butter, 5 tablespoons. Don't leave it in there till it's really, really hot, or it's going to be too warm for the yeast. Fill up your bowl at the bottom, and make sure your mixture's not too hot for the yeast. Now we're going to sprinkle the yeast into this mixture to activate it. And it's going to mix up just for a minute. And we're going to let it sit there for a couple of minutes. Now, if you have quick activating yeast, there's really no wait. So you don't have to wait the 2 minutes. You can just continue to follow to the next step. Otherwise, you do need to let it activate for a couple of minutes. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn the mixer on. We're going to add 1 egg yolk. We're going to put in 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. And now we're going to start putting in our flour. We're going to put in 2 cups of flour, and then we're going to beat it really well before we start adding the remaining flour. Now we're going to add this. Make sure it's on the lowest setting. This. Now it says to beat it vigorously. So we're going to turn it up. It's mixed up good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dough hook in. And it can take up to 2 more cups of flour. So we're just going to go ahead and sift that much. Just leave a little bit in a sifter for your dough out on the counter. So we're just going to start adding a little bit at a time. You can use a scooper if you want to. To this until all the dough comes off the sides of the bowl and clings to the center, the paddle, okay? The dough hook. Now I'm going to scrape the sides and let all of this extra get down in there because I think it's about right. Now we're going to turn it off, okay? And this is your, what we're going to do. We're going to take it out of here. It should be sticky, but manageable, okay? And we're going to get this dough, put it right here on the counter. And all we're going to do is knead it a couple of times. And you're going to do a quarter turn and do that at least in 360 degrees circle for just this one. Because in a few minutes, we're supposed to knead it for 8 minutes, but we're not going to do it. The mixer is. This dough is perfect. So we're going to let it rest for 10 minutes right here on the counter. And then we're going to come back. Okay, our dough has rested 10 minutes. So we're going to take the dough, still a little sticky on the bottom. We're going to throw it in the mixer, pull it up, and we're going to beat it on the low settings for 8 minutes. So we're going to take it out, and we're going to knead it. Now, I'm going to show you how to knead dough in case you don't have a mixer and you're young, you got plenty of energy. You're going to take your dough, you're going to push it away from you, fold it. Well, actually, you turn it a quarter turn, you fold it, you push it. Turn it, fold it, push it. And you use your palms and you move it across the table when you push it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this. I'll start with half. So then I'm going to put this in half again. Half and half. Then you're going to pick up each piece and you're going to roll it into a ball, tucking the edges underneath it. And you're going to place it in your buttered, tuck the seam underneath and set it in the pan. And you're going to do them all that way. So I'm going to do 6 sections. And then with each section, I'm going to cut it in 3 pieces. It's a butter roll. All right, our last one. So we've got the little circles, and some of them are bigger than others. I might trade out some big ones for little ones, just to make it look more even. Okay, now we are going to put this in a proof. I've got my oven on proof. So it is the right temperature for rising the dough. You don't want to rush your dough rising. Don't turn your oven on, so that it's a warm temperature you want it to rise slow. Okay, so we're just putting a little plastic wrap over the top, and we're going to place it in the oven, but I'm going to get both of them ready before I do that. Rise double in size. You want to be careful. You don't want to cause your dough to fall. And so we're going to start them. They're going to bake about 20 minutes. This oven we're putting at 375, but if you were baking them in a large oven, you would bake them at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes, and we'll see you in a minute. Our rolls are ready to cook, so I took them out and put the oven on preheat, and I'm going to let the oven preheat right quick. We're going to bake these at 400 degrees. All right, we're going to pour butter on these, and I'm going to do half with butter and half with sesame seeds. I'm just going to do half and half. Now I'm going to take a little bit of egg wash and put on these other ones. Make sure you do it lightly. You don't want to smash them. And we're going to put a few sesame seeds on these. That one smashed. All right. So you got butter and sesame. Look good. It's so funny how they rose, and you can tell the ones that we brushed actually it dented them a little bit. Pour butter over the top of them. Hey y'all, it's Tammy with Collard Valley Cooks. Today's New Year's Day, and we cannot have New Year's Day without having creamed potatoes. What are creamed potatoes? They're potatoes that are creamed with cream. I use a little sour cream, salt, pepper, and butter. And I use my electric mixer to whip them up nice and fluffy. That is what I call creamed potatoes. Mashed potatoes to me are just potatoes that you cook in your pot, and then you use a potato masher, and so they still have hunks of potato left in them. That to me is mashed potatoes. I'm going to cut up some potatoes because right now we're cooking some black-eyed peas and turnip greens, and this is our traditional New Year's Day meal. And I am glad you have joined us here at Collard Valley Cooks. This is where we cook like Mama did. Collard Valley Cooks has been around since 2017. It's been a little while since I started the show, and it has grown steady, and I'm excited to have y'all here with me today, learning how to cook creamed potatoes. You know, a lot of y'all might know how to cook creamed potatoes, but there's plenty of people out there that have never made creamed potatoes, believe it or not. Yes, there are. So I like to even do the simple things on the show because there are people out there that need to learn how to do it. And I'm doing it just like my mama did. Now, Mama didn't always use sour cream in her creamed potatoes. Most of the time she used canned cream or just whole milk, okay? But I personally like a little bit of sour cream in mine. And I know a lot of y'all out there like to put a little mayonnaise in your creamed potatoes. And I have done that before, and it is good, and it does make them nice and fluffy. So I can see why y'all like to do that as well. We're going to cut up. I usually cut up one potato per person. So if you're just making creamed potatoes for supper and you want to know how many potatoes to cut up, I would cut up at least one medium potato per person. So if you got large potatoes, you could cut up 2 for 3 people. If that gives you a good idea, excuse me, if that gives you a good idea about how many potatoes you need to cut up to feed how many people. So if you're feeding a crowd, then you better buy you a 10-pound bag of potatoes. So if you're feeding a crowd, you better buy you a 10-pound bag of creamed potatoes. And cut them up. Now, when you cook potatoes and you bring them to a boil, they will boil over if you put a lid on them. So do not put a lid on top of them unless it's just to bring them to a boil and then get it off pretty quick, or they are going to boil over and make a mess on the top of your stove. And I have done that many a times.
but just a heads up to you who have not had experience making cream potatoes. So we're going to bring y'all in a little closer and let you watch me cut up one with a paring knife. This is what we used growing up, what Mama always used and what Granny always used. And I'm going to show y'all how I cut my potato with a paring knife. I prefer to use a paring knife to cut and peel my potatoes. This is a paring knife, and I like the one that has a beak end, not the pointed end. I've had them both, of course, and this is just the one I prefer the most. This little knife is easy to handle. I put it in the dishwasher. It stays pretty sharp. And I do sharpen my knives with a knife sharpener. And you can see the knife sharpener and the knife that I like to use. We are affiliated with Amazon. So you can go onto our website and click Shop Now and look at all the things I use in the kitchen if you're interested in one of these items. This little knife is a real good knife to peel with. It does not mess with my arthritis near as much as even my name brand knife, the Cutco, that came with my knife set. I've never been able to peel potatoes and stuff with it without it really bothering my hand. So if you have arthritis and it is harder for you to peel, I suggest you get this little knife and try it. It's not real expensive, and boy, is it nice and sharp. So that's the way I cut my potato. And then Mama always sliced hers. Some people slice their potatoes in round circles. That's what Chris does, just like that. But I typically, let me just go ahead and finish this one off. And I'm going to show you how I typically slice mine. I typically take the potato, go down the middle, and I quarter it into 4 pieces, and then I slice to make cream potatoes, and that way I know they're going to get good and done quick, and I'm not going to have any lumpy potatoes. And I wait until they're good and fork tender before I cream them. Another thing, the key to creaming a good cream potato and it not getting sticky is as soon as they're done, you mix it up into cream potatoes and do not wait. If you let it sit in that starchy water for very long, it turns the potatoes really sticky, and then your potatoes turn like a pasty. They're just not very good. Another thing that makes that happen is if you cook a potato that's not nice and crisp, like these are, and it's kind of rubbery, it will also make you have a real sticky, pasty cream potato. So those two things, do not use a rubbery, older potato, and then make sure that after they boil, you cream them up quick and don't leave them sitting cold in the starch water. So we're going to put enough water over the top of these to cover them. And then we're going to give them on the stove top and boil them until they're nice and fork tender. All right, for our potatoes, it's time to drain them. Now, I've got a white sink, so I have to put something down in the bottom of it so that I can put my hot pot in the sink. I like to mix my potatoes up in the sink. I'm going to drain these. They should be piping hot like these are when you cream them. I set my pot down in the bottom on that metal trivet, and then we're going to add butter, sour cream, salt, and pepper. And if you want the actual recipe, you can go on and look at the description post. I've just been doing it for so long, I just put it in there, and then I taste it, and then if I have to add a little salt, I do. And now we're going to put in a little sour cream. Let me get a clean spoon for that. A tiny bit of milk to start with. And we're going to cream them. Now, this is what I call creamed potatoes. And remember, when you wash off your this after you use it. You should wash it down every time you use it. And you should also take your wash rag and go down the cord, because lots of times we get stuff on the cord and we don't even realize it. So make sure you wipe off that cord as well when you're using your hand mixer to mix anything. Now, as with anything else, you taste it before you serve it. So go ahead and get your spoon, give it a taste, and make sure that it's got enough salt and pepper. It's delicious. Now, I use salted butter. Remember that. So if you make my pound cake, use some salted butter. And if you don't throw a little salt in there, it's not on the recipe. The first thing you're going to need is a pot large enough for your green beans. Now, all my other videos that I've shown when I made these green beans, I use stainless steel. But I will say, the way you have to cook these down and they sizzle and pop, stainless steel will get dirty like this, and it's a lot harder to clean up. Because of the way I sizzle these and cook them all the way down, if you have a non-stick pot, it actually works better because it's easier for you to clean up, and it's also easier to deglaze and get all that goodness into the flavor of the beans instead of on the side of the pot. We're going to start with this non-stick granite 5.5 quart pot. It's anywhere from 5 quarts to 6 quarts. And I do have something like this on the website if you are interested and want to take a look at it. I think it's around $35, the one that I have picked out right now. So we're going to get started with this. All you do, it's so simple, is open your green beans. Do not drain your beans. Regardless of whatever somebody's told you, whatever your granny did or your mama did, don't drain them. Just try them this way one time. Now this is the large can. You can use a large can for this recipe, or you can use 3 cans of the smaller cans. You want them to be cut, okay? Because that's how you grow them in the South. We don't grow French green beans, okay? So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to use an 1/8 cup of cooking oil. Now, cooking oil can be olive oil or corn oil, whatever you want to use, vegetable oil, canola oil. But I have found that this extra light virgin olive oil makes them taste really good, for real. So we're going to put that in there. The next step, believe it or not, is sugar. All right, we're going to get a tablespoon of sugar out of here, and we're going to sprinkle it on the beans. We're going to put these on the stove and cook them on high heat. It doesn't matter if you have electric or gas, just cook them on high heat. Because really all we're doing is boiling the juice off of them. So we're just going to turn on the heat, and we're going to get these beans started. Now if you're in a hurry, you could put a lid on them so that they come to boil faster. And I think I'll do that today. This pot and the one that I have on the website comes with a silicone lid, which I really like, and it also has a vapor hole in it. So we're going to put this on the beans and bring them to a boil. Once they have cooked almost all the way down, I'll come back and show y'all what my secret to make these taste so good is. So you need to take the lid off of it once it starts boiling so that it can lose some of the juice. Now this is the time that I think a lot of people stop cooking their beans, because many people cook them and they think they're cooking my granny green beans, but they're too scared to cook them all the way down. And if you don't hear a sizzle and a pop and them being completely dry on the bottom, then your beans are not going to taste like my granny green beans. This recipe is in our first cookbook. It is very popular, and most people that try it absolutely love it. Now this sugar and this oil are going to come together at the end once all of this liquid cooks down, and they're going to form a brown glaze. And that glaze is what's going to make these beans taste so good. Some people say it's so good that it's changed their life. All right, now they've started to sizzle, and you can hear them. And they're sizzling, and that's what you want them to do. So if you pull them back, you can see that there's a lot less juice, but there's still a little bit. So you can't even let it have a little bit. All of that has to sizzle off in order for them to start to glaze. And once they start to glaze, you'll start smelling them. They have a real good aroma. And you'll know it because you'll smell it, okay? All right, they've been sizzling a good 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to take a masher, and I'm not going to just mash them to death, but I am just going to mash in about 3 places, 3 or 4 places. And then we're going to stir them. And that's what makes people think they came out of your can. Because they got just enough to smash in them and hold that they look homemade. They look just like you canned them. And they're going to taste like it too. I'm still going to let them sizzle because I don't quite smell that smell I'm looking for. Did you hear that pop? You want to hear them start popping a little. I think they're ready. When you get them done, make sure you run them around the edges to get all the glaze off the edges of the pot. They're ready to serve. Yummy green beans. Show you how pretty these are. And they smell so good. I'm telling you, if you make these beans, people will ask you, what in the world did you do these green beans? Because they're amazing.
They're not going to say, "Ooh, these have sugar in it," because they're not going to know.
Nope, they're not.
This is America.
Y'all got to try
You can cook
this.
your food any way you want.
Praise the Lord. So I'm gonna start out with a gravy to melt my cheese in. So we're gonna use. Let me say this about using butter and mac and cheese. Mac and cheese is good with butter, but butter does cause the pasta not to want to cling to your sauce. Okay, so if you're going to use butter and you want some really good mac and cheese, you really ought to make a gravy so that your butter is part of that gravy and it's not just floating around in your mac and cheese, causing your cheese sauce to separate from your macaroni. Okay, here we go. I'm going to use a half a stick of butter. I'm going to add a little pepper, about 3/4 of a teaspoon, and about a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to put in about a half cup of flour, or close to it. And now we're going to mix this up and let the flour brown. A little. All right, it's starting to brown. And if you've got your flour and your shortening or butter, whatever you're using, about in equal proportions, this is about how it should look. It should look kind of like it's puffy and cloudy. If it's runny, you don't have enough flour. And if it's too pasty, you put too much flour in, you can add a little bit of shortening or butter. Now, what we're going to do now, since it's brown, is we're going to add 2 cups of milk.
I'm actually going to add 3 cups. So we're going to get another cup in here. And then I'm going to whisk it well. You need to use a whisk when you're making gravy because it keeps it from being lumpy. This is a gravy whisk. Remember that all of my favorites are on our website at www.colorvalleycooks.com. I have tabs at the top, and you can just click the tab and you'll find this deep skillet and gravy whisk. You'll find the salt and pepper, cellars, I mean just everything. Fish sifter, if you need something, it's there. And it helps support us. We get a very small percentage at no cost to you. So we're just letting this get thick. Then we're going to add our cheese sauce. It takes it a minute to get warm, but once it does, it don't take it but a minute to thicken up. So you need to watch it. Don't walk off and leave and go do something else. I know a lot of people make mac and cheese. They just throw in the noodles and throw in the cheese and throw in a little milk, and you can do that. But this is going to make it be creamier. This is 2 cups of mild cheddar. And I'm not going to put my whisk in that cheese or it'll make a mess. So I'm just going to use a spoon and get all this cheese mixed in here. And then of course we're going to sprinkle cheese on it when it's in the casserole dish. The cheese sauce has a lot of sodium in it, so do not put too much salt, okay? Here we go. Here is our macaroni. We're going to pour it in this big bowl. Do not use oil when you boil your macaroni. Don't put butter in it. Don't put oil in it. Only put a little salt in it, and that way it's going to cling to your sauce. If it's greasy, the sauce is going to slide off of it. Alright, we're going to mix this up. See how it's sticking to the macaroni? And it's not sliding off. It's real clingy. That's how you want it to be. Now I'm going to taste it and make sure it's got enough salt in it. Okay, I'm going to put half of this in my casserole dish. Put a layer of cheese in it. And then put the other half in here. We're going to sprinkle some cheese on this one. Now, if your crew likes cayenne pepper, throw some in there, but I'm not going to, because this is for the kids. And I'm just going to put a little bit of milk over the milk into it. All right, we're just going to get this in the oven and bake it at 350. Right now we've got dressing in here cooking because it's Thanksgiving. Boy, does it look delish. Okay, it's Thanksgiving at the Nichols house, and this is our mac and cheese for the day. I'm going to dip into it and let y'all see how it looks. Nice and cheesy.
Hey y'all, I'm Tammy. And the cameraman is Chris. And today we are making my good old deviled eggs. Just like Mama made, when you put them in your mouth, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, that's just what I remember from growing up. So we're going to get started. I'm going to show you how to make them, and I'm going to give you a lot of tips. All right, one of the most important steps in making deviled eggs is to make sure you got your water boiling before you put your eggs in there. Now, I've got cold eggs out of the refrigerator. You can use them at room temperature, but they actually do better if they're cold. A lot of people will say that some of them could crack. Just cook some extra eggs in case one doesn't work the way you want it to. Whenever you're making deviled eggs, it's always good to go ahead and cook a few extras in case they don't split well or the yolks don't look pretty, whatever. It's always good to have a few extras. So my recipe calls for 6 eggs. I'm going to cook at least 8 or 9 so that I can make sure and get enough pretty ones for my serving dish. Now these cold eggs are cooling that water off a little, but not a lot. And by starting them this way, cold in hot boiling water, they're going to peel a lot easier, okay? All right, so we're going to boil these eggs for 12 minutes, and then I will come back and show you how I mix them up, and we're going to pop them and make them pretty too. These have boiled for a good 12 minutes. Make sure you boil them long enough if you want them to get done, especially if you're going to mix them up pretty quick, and you're not going to let them sit for a few minutes. So we're going to drain these in the sink in some cold water. So I'm just going to rinse them in cold water for a minute or two. But you can see how easy they are to peel when you start them cold in boiling water. And they're not too hot to peel. If you have fresh eggs, they really are harder to peel, period. Okay? That's just the way it is. So if you have fresh eggs and you want to make deviled eggs out of them, I would recommend make sure you refrigerate them for a couple of weeks before you make your deviled eggs out of them. And maybe they'll peel a lot better by then, like these are doing. Okay? Now, I like to use a knife that has a scallop edge just because it makes the side of the egg white pretty when you slice it. Well, that one you can't even hardly tell. Mommy used to always do that. Hers always looked better than that to me. Maybe I'll get a smaller one and let's see if it makes a difference. Yeah, you can see it now. When in doubt, take it out, right? When in doubt, take it out. I'll sit these right here. I'll feed them to my doggies. They'll love them. But whenever you're making something for other people, you want to make sure that everything's just right. And that's what we're doing today. We're making this for a special occasion, whether you're doing it for Thanksgiving or whatever you're going to do it for. Now, since it's almost Halloween and Thanksgiving, I've got a pumpkin in the middle of my deviled eggs. Now, Mama used to fill up the middle of hers with pickles, different kinds of pickles. You can use dill and sweet, and you can even put some pickled beets in there if you wanted to. Or you could put some chow chow in a bowl and put it in the middle. Right here, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the yellows out of these. And I'm just going to lay them on here with the tip side down. So we're going to start with adding some pepper, mustard, mayonnaise, pickle relish, and the pickle relish juice. And if you don't have enough pickle relish juice, you can always add a little sugar. Now, Mama always did. I'm just going to grab a little sugar out of here and put some on it, okay? It don't have to be a lot. Now, if you want the exact recipe, it will be printable online so that your deviled eggs taste just like Mama's did. And that way, you'll be sure and not get too much of mustard or mayonnaise or whatever it is you're putting in there. And they're going to taste really, really good, just like you're used to having them growing up. Now, for some reason, if your mother used dill pickles instead of sweet pickles, all you do is change it up, okay? And it's going to taste just like what you grew up eating if you just, these are just plain old standard deviled eggs that Mama made all the time. There's no heat in them. There's no special ingredients in them, like a lot of people put in them these days. It's, you want to make them like Mama made them, this is it. All right, we're going to put these in a popping bag. And I just dropped my tip down in there. And you can always add a little bit extra mayonnaise if you think it needs it. And like I said, today I am not going to get out a bunch of pickles and stuff because I don't need all of that. This is not like a family reunion meal. It's just the family. But you can see those pickles come right through that tip. And I'll put a link to the bag and the tip that I'm using to make these in the post for you, in case you want to get ready and do these for the holidays. Then you're just going to take some paprika, and I'm just going to barely pat it because you don't want to drown them in it. And a lot of people like to smoke paprika on their deviled eggs. I don't. I like them to taste like Mama made them. And this is the way my Mama made them. And you know, you get used to one thing, and it's fun to make something new every once in a while, but when you're going to be serving it to a crowd, I think it makes more sense just to make them the old-fashioned, normal way. I don't even like them hot. And that's all there is to it, y'all. What about that? And then put you something in the middle. And like I said, it can be food or it can be a decoration, whatever you want it to be. And there you have it. Delicious deviled eggs, just like Mama made.
Today I am making a Thanksgiving turkey. So I'm going to show you how I do it. I just got a honeysuckle white because it was 48 cents a pound. So I'm just going to rinse out the cavity good. Go to where its head was. Flip the skin up and you're going to find the giblets. The neck is usually inside the cavity. We've already pulled that out. And we're just going to rinse water through it good. So let's get some paper towels and dry her really well. Make sure that you have your spices, your fresh herbs, onions. I have rosemary, I have thyme, I have green onion, I have one regular onion cut up, white onion. Then I have some garlic. I'm just going to put this inside of her. I'm going to grab some of this thyme and I'm going to use the tie that came with one of the herbs and I'm going to bind it like this. Okay? And we're just going to place it inside of her. Just like that. And it can stick out, it's fine. You can do 2 of them. Now the top part of the turkey, we're actually, you can see our spices are poking out the other side, which is fine. So let's get some onion and garlic inside of her as well that we cut up. I'm going to transfer her over here, and I've got a whole stick of butter ready to rub her down with. This will help her brown pretty, okay? Okay, now we're going to salt the bird a lot. This is my roasting pan I'm going to use, and I am just going to keep her in this until she gets good and brown, then I'm going to transfer her. There she is. We're going to salt and pepper this side. all I'm going to do is put a little bit of poultry seasoning on her. Make sure your rack is down low in your oven. Put her in. Okay, now, she's not falling apart done. She's only been in the oven for 45 minutes, so I can pick her up with these large, heavy gauge spoons. I'll do this. If you brown your turkey and then you want to transfer her, make sure you got some heavy gauge spoons, okay? Don't try to pick her up with a tongue. She's too heavy, okay? So, here we go. Y'all know I lift my chicken out of pots all the time with these big spoons. They work wonders. So use them. They're your friend. Now, I want this rack. It's the only shallow rack I got. I'm going to put it down in here. Now, I need the drippings out of here. But I want to turn her over, okay? And when I turn her over, you're not going to be able to see the little pop-up anymore, but I don't care because that's not my goal. I want her to cook breast down so that some of those juices run down into the breast meat and help make her tender, y'all. There's the bird. I want to put just a little bit of moisture down on the bottom of it. I've got a cup of apple juice. I'm going to pour down in the bottom. And while we've got her this direction, and we've got her this way, let's go ahead and put a few spices on her. You could never have too much salt on it. I should have put some salt down inside of her when I didn't. A little bit of poultry seasoning on her. To keep her good and moist, I'm putting the lid down on top of it. This is one reason, too, I don't like to buy a big bird. And I'm sealing it. So I'm sealing her on the inside, and I'm sealing her on the outside. She's going to go back in the oven for a good probably 3.5 hours at 325. And we're getting this back in. I'm going to push her all the way to the back so that we have room to cook other things. I'll just let her be on one side. How's that? That way we can cook other things in the stove. Now, I know my arm's in the way, but look, this is the best view for y'all. She's going to fall apart. Apparently, I've really cooked her done. You can see that I put stuff inside of her. She's got rosemary. I put a package inside of her of rosemary, thyme, green onions, and so she smells really, really good. And you can see the onion in the cavity. I want y'all to see this beautiful broth that's in my pan because this breast has been sitting in it. And like I said, it's a young bird. The good thing about cutting your turkey up early is since you've got all that juice, what I like to do is cut it up. Now she's just falling, she's good and done. But what I like to do is cut it up, put it on a plate, and actually pour some of those juices on top of the meat. And the thyme, the garlic, and everything in it. So before I serve my turkey, even if you don't make a gravy, Just take a little bit. Now, if you want it to settle a little bit and skim some of the fat off the top, you can do that too. But reach down in there and get the broth part and just kind of pour it on top of your turkey. Now, our turkey is moist as it can be. There ain't nothing dry about this turkey, okay? But this will make it even better because it's going to bring those spices and stuff into the meat. You can even put it in a pan and keep it warm in the oven and serve it at the same time you serve everything else. This is in our first cookbook. This is one of the very first video tutorials I made years ago in 2017 because, of course, pecan pie is a Southern classic. We're melting a little bit of butter in a batter bowl. 2 tablespoons. That's all you need for this pie. So it's melted and in the batter bowl. Now we're going to add a cup of sugar. That's our oven that's preheated, letting us know. So there's a cup of sugar, and you're going to mix this up. And go ahead to add 3 eggs. We're using 3 eggs because we're doing a deep dish today. If you're doing a regular pie crust, then you're going to use 2 eggs. Okay, we're going to mix this up good. Pecan pie is like one of the easiest pies to make. Super simple. And oh, is it delicious. Now I'm going to add about a teaspoon of flour. You can get by with a ½ teaspoon if you're using a regular pie crust. All right, y'all. I'm using a frozen pie crust today because Mama always did. And I know a lot of you like to. Another great thing about using a frozen pie crust is that they fit inside of a gallon storage bag to store your pie in. You can freeze it or just store it that way. It's so nice and convenient. But if you choose to make your own pie crust and you have a 9-inch pie dish, remember that you need to make enough filling to fill it up because it's about equivalent to a deep dish frozen. So a little standard pie crust, of course, gets full quicker. But we're using that one today. With pecan, I don't do a pre-baked pie crust. All right, so I put a little bit of flour in here. It's a teaspoon for a deep dish, ½ teaspoon for a regular pie crust. All that does is enable that to set up perfectly every single time. You'll never go wrong doing that. That's what Mama always did. Now we're going to use a ½ cup of dark syrup and a ½ cup of light syrup because I like the best of both worlds. It's my favorite way to make the pie. You're going to use a ½ cup of each. So I've already got in a ½ cup of the dark Karo. So now we're going to go all the way up to the cup mark with the light. To me, blending the two together just makes the perfect flavor for a pecan pie because remember, the light doesn't taste as rich. And then if you use all dark, it's a lot richer. And I just like the two combined so much better. So we're going to put in this cup of Karo syrup. Half dark, half light. And the only thing we got left is vanilla. We're going to put in about a teaspoon of vanilla. Mix that up. Super, super easy. and super, super delicious at the same time. Nothing's better than a good old pecan pie. And they're so much better if you make them at home. All right, so what I usually do is I take my pie crust and I put my pecans in. I just bought 5 pounds of chopped pecans from my website store because they're cheaper to buy, and that's what I use the most. So normally Mama would have made halves for a pie, but I actually had a bunch of chopped ones, so I'm going to use them. But put your pecans in the bottom and make sure you got plenty in there. A little bit extra to cover the bottom because you see how much larger this top is than the bottom. So you need to add a little extra to it. And I always put my pecans in first. I don't like to put them in the batter. And then I pour the batter on top of the pecans, and it just gives them a toastier flavor in the end. And they will float to the top. I'm just going to leave a little bit in the thing, and you're going to see that these float to the top. And we're going to get this in the oven, and we're going to bake it. Now, I'm using my little oven today, so I turned down that temperature to 300 degrees. If you're using a regular oven, you're going to bake your pie at 325 degrees for a full hour, okay? Takes a while to make a pecan pie, but boy, are they delicious. See how they're already starting to float up? And they'll continue to do that, and by the time this thing is done, it'll be a beautiful pie. Y'all, I just remembered that I forgot to put my dash of salt in my pecan pie. And let me tell you, it really makes a difference in the flavor. It makes it just over the top. So I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of salt on the top, even if we just got it out of the oven, because it just makes such a difference. And so when you bite into it, you'll get that little bit of salt with that whole lot of sweet. And try not to forget your salt. And if you do, do like I just did and just sprinkle it on the top. Boy, is it good. The trick to getting your pecan pie just right is making sure it's risen in the middle, just like it's risen around the edges. Now, I used a pie crust shield to keep the crust from getting too brown. Do not take your pie out of the oven until the center rises. With pecan, you really need a pie shield so that your crust does not get too brown. It makes a really big difference. Let me show you. When you use a pie shield, you can see it didn't get too brown at all. It's pretty. It looks really good. And you're going to want to wait until this pie cools completely, not refrigerated, but just cools completely to room temperature before you slice it. I cooked it to death like Granny did. Granny always cooked hers to death. And that's the way I like them. Crunchy and delicious when you do them that way. And the crust never makes it onto the plate with me. The pecan pie most of the time. Let me move this one over to the side. We'll see if we can't get this one out. Let me get me a plate. We was in a hurry. We didn't even get a plate because Chris wants a piece of pie. He said, "Can we cut that pie?" I said, "I guess." Here's a few extras. Pecan pie don't need nothing on it. See how when you mix the dark and the light together, you just get a nice, real pretty color. It's not real light, it's not real dark. But it's real good. Yummy. Yummy, yum. Thanks for watching Collard Valley Cooks, where we cook like Mama did. Bye, y'all. Love ya.
Cooking time, it's over now. Tammy, she just showed you how to cook it up like Mama used to do. So go on out and have some fun.
Today, we are making pumpkin pie. One is a no-bake and one's a baked one. And y'all, we are in my daddy's apartment, so we're in a different kitchen. Here in my daddy's house, he has an apartment in the back and my sister lives in the front and his office is in the bottom. So that's why we're in a different setting. So we're gonna get started. All right, we got it in here pretty good. Just make sure all your cracks are mended. There we go. Now we're going to mix this up pretty quick. You're going to start out with a 1/4 cup of butter. You're going to use a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. You're going to use 4 large eggs. These are really large. These are some big old eggs. 2, 3, 4. You're going to use, you can just throw everything in at one time and then mix it. You're going to be using 3/4 cups of evaporated milk. So we're going to use 3/4 cups of evaporated milk. I think I'll go ahead and mix this up and then we're going to add the pumpkin. Okay. Now then, this would work. Okay. So you're going to use 1½ cups of cooked pumpkin. Now my recipe says fresh cooked pumpkin, but I'm using canned pumpkin today. You can substitute. You can use either one. And I definitely need to get me a new can opener for this apartment. All right, so it's 1½ cups. Let's see how much is in this can. I think it's probably going to be about a can of pumpkin. A can of pumpkin is 15 ounces, so it lacks maybe a little bit. All right, there's 1 cup. You want to get plenty in here because you want it to fill up your pie crust. Now let's see if we got a 1/2 cup now. This is a 1/2 cup right here. Maybe it is a can of pumpkin. Yeah, we're just going to put the whole can in there. Pretty much the can. So it's a 15-ounce can. Will do. I tell you to use a teaspoon of baking spice or pumpkin pie spice. And I actually just have some apple pie spice, which is the same thing as bacon spice kind of. We are at the apartment and I don't have everything I normally do. So we're going to use that in our pumpkin pie. And of course we're going to use cinnamon. We do have cinnamon. As I turn around in the circle, trying to find stuff. We've had to go shopping since we've been here. It's been a while since we hung out here. And a lot of our stuff needed to be replaced. So this is a teaspoon of cinnamon. So you have 2 teaspoons of spice in there. So you just want to make sure you got everything. You got your pumpkin, you've got your butter, your evaporated milk, your eggs, you've got your baking spice or pumpkin pie spice, your cinnamon, brown sugar, and granulated sugar, and a dash of salt. Let's put some salt in it. We got our oven on. And so we're just going to mix this well. We're going to bake it at 350 degrees about 45 minutes until it sets in the middle. So you're going to want the top to rise in the middle just like it does on the sides. All right, now we're going to make one that's a no-bake pumpkin pie. And I am going to use butter. And I went ahead and melted it. It is 1/4 of a cup. And this is going to help your pie set up when it goes into the refrigerator because butter, once it's cold, is nice and firm. So the cream cheese will be nice and firm after it's refrigerated as well. But we are going to take 8 ounces of cream cheese, the 1/4 cup of butter, and 1/2 cup of sugar. And we are going to blend that. And it's nice to have that butter melted to get this nice and creamy. Now, if your house is nice and warm, you could let that butter be room temperature, but I think it's better just to go ahead and melt it. That way you get a nice creamy result. We're going to go ahead and add a teaspoon of cinnamon to this. And we're going to bake this for a few minutes, y'all, and let it get nice and fluffy. All right, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of canned pureed pumpkin. And I'm going to taste it and decide whether or not I want to use a cup. This is a recipe I'm making on the fly. And I didn't want to use somebody else's, mainly because a lot of them fuss and say they don't set up good. And I know this one's going to set up good because I added the butter to it. And I really want to get a taste of the flavor of this before I decide how much pumpkin to put in it. So if I only need a 1/2 cup, that's what we're going to use. You want it to have a nice pumpkin flavor, but you might can achieve that with a 1/2 cup. I'm going to see what I think. Because I also want to taste the cream cheese. I think you can taste the pumpkin plenty. And you can really taste the cream cheese. I think the 1/2 cup is absolutely perfect. And that's what we're going to use. It's really, really good. Now we're going to take about a cup of Cool Whip. You're going to save the other. Just about a cup is all you need. You don't need a whole lot. And you're going to save the rest of it for the top of your pie. This is such an easy pie to make. It's a lot like my other no-bake cream cheese pies. That's plenty of Cool Whip. This is going to be delicious. It's going to set up really pretty because we added that butter to it. It has a really good flavor. That butter is actually going to make it taste better than most people's. So just fold that Cool Whip in there good. And then you're just going to place it in a ready-made graham cracker crust, or one that you make is fine. And get it in the refrigerator and get it chilled. Talk about a fast dessert. Now that's a fast one. And I'm telling you, it tastes very pumpkin-y. pie. Pretty, easy, and delish. We're going to get it in the refrigerator, and then we're going to reach back behind us and get out our other pumpkin pie. All right, it's lunchtime. We're all hungry. I laid out some chicken fingers. I bought these in the frozen section during the pandemic because there wasn't a lot of available meat. And so I just got the store brand of chicken fingers. They're just, tenders, I think is what they're called. So we're going to put these in buttermilk, and we're going to go ahead and fix our batter. My chicken fingers are delicious. They're easy to make. And we're going to put in 1 1/2 cups of self-rising flour. And if you don't have self-rising, of course you can use plain. But I put a little baking powder in there with it, if I did. So there's 1 1/2 cups of plain flour, okay? Now we're gonna put in some Hidden Valley Ranch. And we're going to use one and 1/2 tablespoons of this. So there's 1 and 1/2. Paprika, 2 teaspoons. One, 2. 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. This is a half, so I gotta put in 3 of these. So that's 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and then a teaspoon of pepper. So you got your chicken in the buttermilk, you got 1 1/2 cups of flour, a teaspoon of pepper, 2 teaspoons of paprika, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 1/2 tablespoons of Hidden Valley Ranch. And now we're going to mix those together, and that's what we're going to coat our chicken in. I've got our skillet over here preheating. You can see the eye under it is hot. We're going to go ahead and put some oil in here and let it get preheated. And I usually use at least about a 1/2 inch of oil when I fry chicken finger. I've got tater tots in my air fryer over there. You can hear them. We're going to swap places with this. We're going to mix this up. Okay? And we're going to start frying this. I'm going to see if it's hot enough. You can just get a little piece of chicken, put it in here, and just put it in your grease. And when it starts to float and sizzle, that's when it's going to be ready to drop. That's a pretty good view there. Now you can see that it's starting to pop and sizzle. So I'm going to go ahead and start breading some of these fingers and just letting them sit on the side of my pie plate. Press it in there good so that they have a nice coating. And when you're using self-rising, there's no need to double dip because it just does a really good job of getting crunchy, and it's pretty thick on the chicken already. So I like to coat all my fingers and then drop them at the same time, of course. See, I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8, so I'll cook 4 at a time. And you're only going to fry these 3 minutes per side. I'm going to drop these. It's going to cool the grease down just a tad. Our grease is going to turn kind of a reddish orange color because of the paprika. Make sure you get them all in there. And it's pretty much almost deep frying. So we're going to turn our timer on for 3 minutes. And when it beeps, we'll flip them over. And while we're doing that, we'll go ahead and finish battering these. Alright, my eye's right at 6. That's 3 minutes. We're going to flip them. And Chris just came in from fishing, so he'll get a piece of chicken. 3 more minutes. All right, we got 20 seconds left, so these are almost ready. Now, these are perfectly brown. So if you got an electric eye, you may want to cook them on number 6 and try, that. And that way they won't get too brown against the bottom of the skillet. They look good. So we're going to pick these up and put them in here with these. This is a blending fork that I use. I use it for a lot of things, and not just for blending, but we used it to blend the flour. And now we're using it to get the chicken out and flip the chicken. And that way you only have one utensil dirty. And I'm going to show you some sauce that I'm making. And there's a video for the sauce. If you'll just search CVC honey mustard or Color Valley Cooks honey mustard, you'll find it online. The recipe's always at the bottom of the post. Turn that off. Now for the honey mustard, I just use mayonnaise, mustard, and honey. Mix them up together in a bowl. If you want it to taste a little bit more like Chick-fil-A sauce, then you could put in a little bit of barbecue sauce, and it makes it taste more like the Chick-fil-A sauce. Because all their Chick-fil-A is pretty much honey mustard with some barbecue to give kind of a little bit of a smoky flavor. When you do your chicken fingers like this, they're nice, they're done, and they're so juicy because you don't overcook them. And to dip them in honey mustard, there's nothing better. Thanks for watching Collard Valley Cooks, where we cook like Mama did. My kids love their mama's cooking.